Welcome back to That's Logistics, baby.
We're going to start today off with a trucker story. Okay. One time in Utah on One time in Utah on I-84, I hit an elk. Have you ever seen an elk? They're huge. Seriously, this mofo jumped in front of my truck and committed suicide. But he took my radiator with him.
Oh,
At this time, in 2002, I did not have a cell, so I relied on our satellite comm for communication. So it's early Sunday morning, about 3 a.m., and I'm dead in the water. Unfortunately, Sunday morning is also when they do that maintenance on that SATCOM system. So I have no way to tell anyone anything until it comes back up at noon. I piddled around for a bit, took a nap, doodled, etc. But then I got a bit bored and decided to get out of the truck and sit outside for a little bit since it was pleasant weather. I should also mention at this point that I play harp and kept a 24-string harp in the truck with me.
Oh my God, that's so impressive.
Such a unique instrument to play.
Yes.
I crank the CB so that I can hear if anyone's coming. Then I take my harp and a blanket out on the ditch and start noodling around. It's been about 30 minutes. It's only 10:30 a.m. and the road has so little traffic on it, I'm beginning to wonder if I'm the last living person on earth. Then I hear two guys faintly jabbering on the radio. I'm still hanging out on the ditch and I see no reason to get up and go back to the truck. I hear them get louder, talking about their girlfriends or wives or something, and then suddenly they pass me and the conversation stops. One driver says, "What's wrong, Jake?" And the other driver responds, "Man, I don't know, but I think I just saw an angel in the ditch playing a harp." To which the other guy replies, "Driver, you've been huffing too many diesel fumes."
Oh my gosh.
At the end, he says, "I miraculously sprouted wings."
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
What a way to pass the time, though, playing a harp.
Yeah, and yeah.
How do you even go about learning that?
I mean, you got to find an instructor for one, but it's definitely not the piano, as I feel like most people in Utah play the piano.
Yeah,
yes. Instrument to play, but that's pretty cool. At least he had that hobby to lean on.
Keep him occupied.
Situation. And also, how cool to be hit on via the whatever it's called, the CV. Just kidding.
That's hilarious.
Like, I saw an angel. What?
You did?
That's
where?
Me.
Oh my God. Okay, this next one is about customer ghosting and how to collect. So the customer accumulated just over $10K in debt and was putting it off for a couple months, now saying he will pay and coming up with different excuses and whatnot. But now stopped picking up my calls altogether and not responding to text messages. So what would be the best steps to motivate him? Will calling cops do anything, or taking him to court is the only solution?
Showing up in person is always a motivator. You don't have to do anything crazy, but, it really brings things to a whole other element. So I guess if they're relatively close, that could be a good idea. Or I would say the next safest bet would just be taking them to court.
Legal action.
Yeah. But also, check their credit score. Don't do business with just anyone that's going to give you a load.
Right.
There's so many, shippers out there that are maybe not in the best place financially. So just at least know that going into it if they're not going to be upfront about it with you. But
there's ways to check and protect yourself before getting into business.
Getting to that point.
Yeah.
Because that's a bummer, collecting.
Someone responded and said, if your customer is the shipper, contact the receiver. If your customer is the receiver, contact the shipper. Tell them you don't want to, but are legally allowed to bill them for shipments. Ask them for help getting in touch with the customer to avoid them getting an unexpected bill. You'll most likely lose future loads from the customer for making them look bad to their vendor or customer, but who cares? They're deadbeats that don't pay their bills.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. We've done that before too.
Crazy that it has to come to it, but in dire situations, I guess.
You do what you gotta do.
True. This next one is, when is a broker responsible for damaged freight? The Carmack Amendment and subsequent court rulings uphold that the carrier is responsible for cargo claims. What, if any, situations can lead to a broker being responsible? We brokered a load of pharmaceuticals to a box truck's carrier and a driver got into a serious accident. It's a miracle the driver was not killed. The situation is effed up. Our customer, another broker that uses us to cover their box trucks, provided little details on the load. For example, when asking for a quote, they never mentioned the commodity or value. It was an expedited load, and they were desperate to get it covered. The whole quoting and booking process was very rushed. The value is not listed on any bill. The shipper bill does state pharmaceuticals, but the carrier accepted the load anyway, even though their insurance doesn't include pharmaceuticals. So far, we have told them to pound sand because cargo claims are between shipper and carrier, end of story. Plus, I just feel like they lacked clarity. Pharmaceuticals is a whole different ballgame with its own set of rules. You make sure that is front and center when booking. It's plain negligence not to.
Crazy. And agreed. There's just certain commodity types that require that, but also like you need to be, again, asking the right questions. It can't just be all about the load or all about the rate. There's questions that lead up to that decision. And if you're not asking them, you're putting yourself in some very rocky waters.
Right. And I Googled it. According to Gemini AI, they legally have to disclose that it's a pharmaceutical load.
Makes sense.
So crazy.
So know your stuff, people.
Exactly. Someone commented on it. It says, unless you have a co-brokering agreement and the broker whose customer owns the freight made it clear to the customer that their freight was being outsourced to another broker, not directly to a carrier, you guys illegally double brokered the load and are now liable for damages. If I was the owner of the freight and it was worth the hassle of a lawsuit, I'd name all three parties on the lawsuit: original broker, your company, asset-backed carrier. Really bad situation to be in, and I do everything I could to manage it away from a lawsuit, including taking a loss and pressuring the trucking company to also pay out some claim amount. It'd be especially bad for you if the customer/freight owner did communicate to at least one party that the goods were pharmaceuticals. I'm surprised the BOL doesn't have a commodity listed because that's also a huge red flag. Some tricky stuff. Tricky and messy. So don't get yourself in a mess. Okay. This other one is a no invoice in 5 days, no pay, bond approved policy is the title of it.
Oh my gosh.
Just to set the scene. I am a shipper, but I have a family that operates a carrier. Recently, they picked up a shipment with a new broker, but old MC and authority. The transit from pickup and delivery was 2 days. Anything quicker was going to violate FMCSA. Driver gets to delivery on time, but the receiver is slow to unload him, but whatever, this isn't the issue. The issue is that the broker in their small print says that the original POD along with an invoice must be physically in their hands 5 days after pickup or otherwise they won't pay. Well, because of the delay at the receiver, it meant that 3 days elapsed before the driver can send the original paperwork to the office, and then the office can scan and print out the invoice and send it. All in all, the invoice with BOL is received by broker 10 days after shipment is picked up. Now, the broker won't pay because he didn't receive physical copies within 5 days. Electronic copies do not count. Filed on bond, insurance company says that they won't accept because their carrier breached the terms. Since when are insurance companies now siding with fraudulent brokers? This was 6 days ago. This is recent. That's
actually really wild. I know that like the rate confirmation is that it's like a contract, right? Especially tied to that load. So if you have a really good one, you can put someone in a very awkward situation. But there's anything I've learned in the 14 years of transportation and logistics is always look at the fine print. Always, always. Been there one too many times, especially early on, not paying attention to the fine print. And those were very costly mistakes. So I hate that, though. I don't feel like that should be legal.
Especially
like 5 days is pretty crazy from pickup date. Like why from pickup date?
I don't know.
Because from delivery date makes a little bit more sense.
But even then, that's excessive.
Extremely excessive.
Yeah.
Like it's 2025. Why isn't it electronic? Like I would try suing them and trying to take the approach of like, in today's world, why wouldn't an electronic version suffice? Yeah. Like I'll still mail it in.
Right.
But at least you have that proof that it was delivered, because I can also recognize, the why behind wanting that bill lating. But there's like a million different ways. And then I'd also take the approach, like, is your shipper requiring that of you? Because if that's the case, fine. But if they're not, then
why do we? Yeah.
right.
What is the reason? Because I've always been curious on why some companies harp on we need the physical copies. Just like fabrication?
No,
or?
I think it comes down to like who their shipper is, right? Like in this scenario, the broker needed it, and so it could be because that shipper requires paperwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is some shippers out there that still require the physical copy of it, but most of them are making the investments necessary to stem away from that, because it just comes down to it's just more cost, right? Like you're having to mail it in,
right?
Your driver's having to logistically go find somewhere to drop his driver envelopes at, right? Like so on and so forth. So I think as an industry, it's just, and I've said this before, like we're the slowest moving industry in the sense of like development, like progressing, right? And so I would say that's probably one of the most overlooked areas, but there's no way, like I'm willing to take some pretty good chances here to say this, but there's no way that the majority of the shippers are requiring the physical copy.
Yeah.
It's going to be the one-offs.
Right.
And if that's the case, then I can also understand where that broker is coming from. But otherwise, just seems a little weird.
Yeah.
From pickup date.
That's an interesting detail, the pickup versus the delivery.
Yep. That's what I hung on to anyways.
Okay, last one I have for you. It's another trucker story.
Okay.
A friend of mine has a relative who one time he was supposed to ship containers of whipped cream from one state to another passing through the Rocky Mountains. He looked at the route that was provided and realized he could save time by taking another road through the mountains. Once he gets to the other side of the mountain, he stops for a meal or something and checks on the back. Turns out the pass he took was high enough in altitude that the pressure caused the lids to pop off all of the containers, and in the inside of his trailer was covered in whipped cream. The whole inside. Someone responds, I guess there's a planned route for a reason.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I have never, like, I don't have very much experience with, like, chips and stuff, but I do know that in the early ages or stages of my career, like, we were always told, like, stay clear from chips. Like,
yeah.
Like, we don't want to mess with it. And again, it's because of, like, the Rocky Mountain terrain and all that stuff, right? The mountain terrain.
The elevation.
Yeah. And then also, like, the planned routes, that's just more miles, which means more cost.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
If there was a planned route and he's like, I'm just going to go this way.
Took it upon himself.
Oh, I hate that for it.
Yeah, that's terrible.
And I don't really know what the cost of that would be.
I mean, it would be the whole, I was going to say it would be a whole load. Like, they can't salvage that.
Is that a $30,000 claim or is that like a 50, 60? Like, how expensive is it to make this stuff?
I don't know. That's a good question. It's a great one. That's all I have for you today.
Awesome.
If you have any crazy stories you want us to share, leave them in the comments.